I believe this is the end of the movie. So now let's start some serious topics. My name is Michał Kudła. I represent today the Association for Transport Economics, and I would like to ask you to help me invite up on the stage our distinguished guests. And now I will look on my agenda because I don't want to mix, the presidency. Please help me welcome up on the stage Mr. Adam Pustelnik, the Deputy Mayor of Łódź. Mr. Filip Czernicki, CEO and President of the Management Board of CPK. Mr. Morgan Fowkes, Deputy Director General of Airports, Council International European Region. And Mr. Édile Joie, Head of the Aviation Policy Unit at the European Commission. And I invite you to take your seats. And while waiting for the last of our panelists, I would like to say that if you want to participate in the panel, you are more than welcome. You can find me on your LinkedIn and see my latest posts and write your comments over there. And I believe that the most important question today, because we're gonna speak about three main subjects. So the sustainability or decarbonization of aviation, the security, and civil-military cooperation, the dual-use airports within the TEN-T network. I think that the most important question is whether we really can achieve the net zero goal by 2050. So without further expectations, I will pass the floor on to Morgan. If you could elaborate on this topic and tell us more. What's your opinion on that?
Well, thank you very much. Is the microphone working? Yes. Okay, that's great. So I'm Morgan Fowkes. I'm with ACI Europe, the Airport Trade Association. We're based in Brussels, and yes, we have been working quite a bit on airport decarbonization. I think that when we talk a little bit about sustainability, we shouldn't limit it to decarbonization. We should also talk a little bit about noise issues, as we have quite a few noise problems to deal with at selected European airports. But we can certainly start with decarbonization, and on this, as airports, we have been very active all the way back to 2009. When we launched the Airport Carbon Accreditation, which is one of our flagship programs in Europe, and it has become the industry standard for carbon management at airports. It started in Europe very small, essentially with the board members of ACI, who committed to participate in the scheme. Now in Europe, we have 301 airports. In Poland, we have Gdańsk and Warsaw Chopin airports, but the 301 airports in Europe account for 80% of passenger traffic. So the scheme has evolved, and we have 7 different levels, starting with level 1, which is mapping of aviation emissions, and all the way to level 5, which means that the airport has a balanced net zero for scope 1 and 2 emissions. These are emissions within the control of the airport, those emissions that the airport can control, and the airport has an engagement plan to reduce scope 3 emissions from stakeholders, including airlines, to become net zero by 2050. So that's really for the airport part.
But do you think this is doable? I mean, we've got other airports that are not within the EU. Aren't you afraid of carbon leakage, that anybody traveling from Asia to other parts of the world would try to avoid European airports because they will be more expensive.
Yes, I think so. Now we move on to the next topics, which is really decarbonization, for the industry. For that, we have a platform. It's called Destination 2050. We had a big meeting last week. Some of you attended in Brussels last week. Yes, we believe we can achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050, but the costs have increased significantly, and the emphasis is much more on SAF. And for that, we have a number of messages to the European Commission, including having a true industrial policy for the production of SAF, and invest in research and development, make sure aviation is a priority in national strategies when it comes to energy. Also, quite clearly, there will be a cost to pay to achieve net zero emissions. I mean, the cost of flying within Europe will increase. Certainly, if you compare flights of the same distance between 2 EU destinations and 1 EU destination and 1 destination outside EU, if you were to fly between Brussels and Palermo or Brussels and Tunis, the cost to the airline with the combined impact of the Fit for 55 measures will be a cost increase for the airline of about 25%. So there will be an increase in price and fares for passengers. It will be probably about 15% compared to a business as usual scenario. We all know that fares have increased quite a bit in Europe, and this is due to a shortage of aircraft and a concentration of the market. So, I will leave it to that for now. I don't want to monopolize the floor on this, but, just to provide some elements. We believe it's doable. The cost of balloon, I think we're now at 1.3 trillion euro to achieve carbon neutrality. These are the latest numbers that were released last week, and in an open letter to Commission President von der Leyen to ask for true support from the EU side to develop and make it happen in our sector. We don't believe we can do this alone. Thanks.
Okay, so I think that's very natural that now the floor goes to Eddy Lejoie from the European Commission. Do you think you will be able to support the airports? Because up until now, it wasn't very much in the European Commission policy.
I don't know if it was. First of all, sorry for my for my voice. I will do some effort so that you can understand. But Morgan already explained very well the commitment. I'm new in the business because I've been 4 years in the TEN-T policy, now in aviation policy. And indeed, I was very, I would say, positively surprised to see with this Destination 2050 the commitment of all aviation stakeholders to decarbonize aviation. So we had there in this Destination 2050 the airports, the airlines, also the manufacturers, so all the stakeholders to work on, I would say, towards this objective. Will we do it? We are, I would say, committed to do it, and I think that what we have done is to provide, I would say, that's the very, very first point, the legal certainty. So we have a clear objective in terms of development of the SAF, so of the zero emission fuels for aviation. So we have clear mandate which are binding for the fuel suppliers, and definitely the airports have a key role to play there, as the fuel will be available at their place, or they will also have to make investment for that. So yeah, definitely we are working towards this objective. The challenge will be now the production of fuels, not only of biofuels, but of e-fuels, which will be necessary if we want to have the necessary volumes. You said a sentence which was perhaps a little bit tough with the Commission, saying that we didn't really take care of airports. Perhaps it's true that when you look EU funding, we are putting more money into rail. But when you look at the TEN-T policy, all transport modes are included in the TEN-T policy. And perhaps before talking about greening of transport, we have to recall what is the origin, the philosophy of the TEN-T policy, which is to build the internal market with infrastructure and connectivity. And airport have a key role to play on connectivity, so making sure that all regions of Europe are connected to the economic center. And if you read the TEN-T regulation that was adopted very recently, so last year, airport have a clear place. You cannot conceive maritime transport without the port, but you cannot conceive aviation without the land infrastructure, which are the airport. And if you read the TEN-T regulation, you will see that we put, it's true, a lot of perhaps burden on the airport so that they decarbonize, but that they also play their role, I would say, in the chain, in the transport chain.
So I understand that if Mr. Czernicki starts his construction, he will easily receive money for the construction of the airport. Yeah.
Then we have the budget which is given to us by the member states.
I already heard it.
The budget, the CEF, the Connecting Europe facility, is almost exhausted, which is I would say positive in the sense that we could find and fund a very good project and use the budget already while we are still midterm of the current multi-annual financial perspective. So now we are working very hard on the future financial perspective, and I would say highlighting in the debate which will be on the table the importance of transport infrastructure, but also the importance for the EU to be involved in the selection of projects, because it's only the EU which can have the, let's say, the broad perspective and the EU perspective of the infrastructure. So then definitely if we have the budget, we will finance. To be very clear, as far as airport, under the current Connecting Europe facility, we were not financing, let's say, expansion of capacity, because there is a matter of competition there, but definitely we have been, and we would like in future to continue to be involved, in particular in the investment for the greening of infrastructure, and in particular of airport, which is already the case today, to a small scale, I have to admit, but there would be a clear commitment of the Commission, if the budget is available, to give a push, I would say, to the greening of infrastructure, including airports.
Thank you. But and now I direct this question to Mr. Czernicki. But do you think that this is really fair play if we need to invest our hardly earned money, this money that's coming from the member states, but also from our national budget, if we want to open such a big airport as Turkey did in Istanbul, of all the Gulf countries, and they open airports funded with money coming from the oil industry. Do you think it's fair play and CPK can really achieve a success in such an environment?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me and for having me on this panel. But just to return back to the question and the main subject you just asked, I have to say that CPK has basically quite a different situation than many other airports that already exist for some time. Greenfield investment, especially in those times, needs to, first of all, look further ahead and the Green Deal and the perspective of 2050 in such investments doesn't seem to be far, because this only just taking into account the time of needed for the investment and the time for adjusting to the rules that we are aiming for is quite natural. That's one. Secondly, having a greenfield investment also gives us an opportunity just to use from very scratch, from the very beginning, from the designing stage, using the most advanced, most modern solutions and options, even in master planning, even when we start plan the whole investment. So designing and building a net zero ready airport, I believe, is much easier than modernizing, than changing the existing ones. So in our case, the airport will be delivered in 2032, will be a net zero ready airport with terminal that we hope to have a BREEAM excellence with solar power plant included into the whole project, with already designed in infrastructure for electrical vehicles and all ground service equipment. So this is part of this plan from very scratch.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so are you also planning, because in the as I understand it, the TNT regulation, there is also we speak about hydrogen-ready airport, about preconditioned air supplied to the aircraft. Is it also planned within the CPK?
We definitely think of solar plants and electrical vehicles that will be serving the ground services. Facility for SAF fuel, of course, is also included. With hydrogen, it's still I would say too futuristic to have it designed for now.
It's very interesting, because recently in one of the cities, actually, there was an investment within a hydrogen facility for public transportation, and actually the company that signed the agreement said that they would not be able to deliver it because there will be nobody to receive the fuel. So I admit that this is quite futuristic.
Just one sentence. What the main advising companies are telling us: don't experiment. So whatever we are planning, whatever we are designing and planning things that already exist, that already are functioning well. We have to implement things that are working well, not to experiment with solutions that are still not fully integrated and fully operational at other airports.
But I also understand that the multimodal approach of CPK, the investment in railroads, would help to achieve this net zero.
Definitely, yes.
So are you planning within your railway part also to invest in renewable energy rolling stock? Sorry for this off topic.
Sounds like off topic. I have to say that I mean what we are in charge of is infrastructure. So as for the railroads, we are in charge of building it, not of the electricity supply. So it's not up to us to decide how it's going to be electrified.
Okay. Now, if we could move to Mr. Adam Pustelnik from the city of Łódź. Yes, please help me give a warm welcome to Mr. Jakob Heinsen from the Ministry of Transport in Denmark. You're very welcome in this panel, and maybe I will continue with my question to the mayor while you getting ready to receive your question about decarbonization and sustainability of aviation. I've read that because the city of Łódź is the owner of the airport in Łódź, we also have Mrs. President here with us, and I know that you are planning a big investment into photovoltaic energy, but yet your airport is really small. The traffic is quite small. Do you think this investment would help you achieve some bigger traffic and passenger figures?
Good morning. My name is Adam. I'm the Deputy Mayor of the City of Łódź. It's a big pleasure and honor for me to be here with you tonight. Sorry, today. I'm already thinking about the evening. It's kind of a philosophical question. Yes, you're right. Which airport is, let's say, boutique? 450,000 passengers annually is far from Atlanta or Dubai, I gotta admit. And yes, you're also right that we are planning an investment into a photovoltaic farm. But I don't believe it will have a clear or direct impact on the amount of passengers. If sustainability or green energy domination would be the factor that maintains or stimulates the passenger movement, Atlanta would have never been the biggest airport on Earth. The same with Dubai, similar with Istanbul and many other big airports. So the fact that we changed, or maybe not even changed, but amended delicately our energy mix, I don't believe it will affect a single additional passenger. But in general, I think it's a step in the right direction because with the current energy costs, and in my opinion, they won't get lower anytime soon, you have to do anything that you have within your powers, within your disposal and within your reach to diversify, to lower the amount of money that you pay. And this, according at least to the data that I have on my desk, will do so. So it will indirectly, it might affect the amount of passengers in a way that it will release some funds. Then we can finally fuel into the airport to make it a better place, to make it more effective. Because, I don't know, maybe my opinion is different than Madam President, but I think, unfortunately, that it's fully owned by the city. If we had some state-owned or some other institutional investors, definitely it would be easier to invest more. And I think that our airport, mostly not because of me or because of my colleagues from the city board, but because of mostly the location and the unique infrastructural circle around that, I think it has really big potential in it. Of course, not Atlanta or Dubai style, but in our category, it has some potential. But in order to take advantage of this potential, we have to invest. And the city books and the city accounts are insufficiently powerful to do so. But you know, every couple million that we might save through movements like the photovoltaic farm, it counts. So I don't believe it will be a revolution, but a small step in a good direction.
Obviously, thank you. Let's move to Mr. Jacob. If you could say how Denmark is planning to achieve the net zero, and what steps are you undertaking in this direction?
Yeah, thank you. Well, in my intervention, I'll discuss sustainable aviation from the point of view of the recent Danish experiences with actually trying to make aviation greener. In Denmark, we have decided to spend more than 100 million euro to launch sustainable domestic aviation starting in 2025. And the political ambition is that flights in the first place for one route should be zero emission. The government support for this route should be granted on the basis of technological neutrality, so that projects relying on both electrical aircrafts as well as SAF and hydrogen can receive funds. So, as I said, in the first place only for one route. It might be a small one, it might be a bigger one, and then later on, it should cover all domestic flights, which is not a lot compared to other countries. Denmark is a small country, so we don't have a lot of domestic flights. And the purpose of this project and its ambition, it was to try and put pressure on the industry to think outside of the box, and support the industry by initiating the transition to zero emission technologies. The task here was not to solve the climate crisis, to be quite honest, with the CO2 reductions achieved. The CO2 reductions would be small, and they would be expensive. If we had wanted to do more for the CO2 reductions, we should have, we should buy, for instance, rather buy methane reduction feed for Danish cows or something like that. So, in other words, we are fully aware that launching this one domestic route will not have much of an impact on total CO2 emissions. Instead, it will be, if I may say so, a pilot project. But I think the experiences learned to date will be of some interest anyway. And I must admit at once that we haven't got any flights flying yet. We have met a number of challenges, and to be more specific, we could say that there were 2 red tape challenges and 1 green challenge. And the first one was the fact that there's not yet an approval to fly 100% SAF, but rather with a maximum of 50%. And of course, if in order to fulfill the ambition, this will have to change. But it depends on certification companies that are not within sort of our powers to change. Secondly, the current guidelines for state aid makes it difficult to carry out a project based on technological neutrality, as different rules for state aid applies to electrical propulsion and aircrafts using SAF. And then it can also be quite a long process, since the Commission has to make an individual assessment of each support scheme. And then there's the green challenge, and it is that it's the question, how sustainable is current SAF made of used cooking oils? At least a number of green interest organizations and some political parties in the Danish parliament have criticized the use of used cooking oils and call for alternatives that are more sustainable. Yeah, I think that was what I would like to say here. To
Yes, thank you very much for this intervention. I just want to follow up on that because I'm not sure if you are aware that recently on the Polish media there was a story that all flights to a small city in Denmark were cancelled by one of the carriers. I guess, and it was a nightmare for hundreds of little children because, as you may imagine, this was about the flights to Billund. And the story, I know if it's true, but that's how it was presented in the media, is that this air carrier canceled the flights because of green emission costs. Can you confirm it or deny it? Is it, was it linked anyhow?
Oh, I think the story that you refer to is about flights. Is about Ryanair.
I think so.
Yeah, and as I guess you all know, Ryanair flies sort of on the margin, and so I think it can very well be the case that increased environmental costs, and I think what they in particularly refer to is the introduction in Denmark of a passenger charge. That it has had that it has meant something for their decisions, but I don't know what to say about that because Ryanair still flies from Denmark, it flies from Copenhagen, it flies from other airports in Jutland. So I think it's as you know, in nation states we used to give all blame to Brussels. And Ryanair uses to give all blame for their decisions on governments. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Everybody knows that the policy of Ryanair, but still, I'm looking at a chart prepared by KPMG back in 2023. And I'm sure you won't be able to see it because it's hardly possible for me to see anything. But they considering what's the price increase that a passenger might accept to finance the decarbonization. So if we could maybe follow up on that, and I guess that maybe Morgan, you would have some insight into that as you are representing the airports, and you can feel how much the price increase can influence the passengers' decisions.
Well, first, to also comment on the previous speaker, Ryanair does not only blame governments; they also blame airports. So we're in the same boat, or others. But in terms of what price passengers are willing to pay to finance decarbonization, I said that the cost of decarbonization, according to the platform Destination 2050, the cost of achieving decarbonization have ballooned to 1.3 trillion euro by 2050. I think it's a little bit difficult to answer your question. What we've seen, and I've said earlier in my intervention, that we believe that the cost of flying will increase by 15 to 20% due to the combined impact of the Fit for 55 package, and that will reduce the demand for air travel. And this is how you achieve decarbonization as well, because it's also because the demand will be cut. What we could see also after COVID is that airfares have increased very significantly. But we see also that people are leaning more towards experiential consumption as opposed to material consumption. So the younger generation will not necessarily want to purchase a house or a car, but they won't give up on the weekend and they won't give up on travel. So it means that when we look at surveys that are done and among others by MasterCard, that people plan to spend the same amount of money on experience and including flying. So I think there is scope for people to continue to travel despite increase. How much, I don't know. It for sure, it will impact demand, and that's also how we achieve decarbonization in the long term. That's one of the parameters, along with the introduction of SAF, reduction of consumption, and the electrification of aircraft, first on short distances, and in the much longer term, hydrogen powered aircraft. But it is one of the impact is a reduction of demand. This is how you get to decarbonization and net zero by 2050.
Are there any airports in your network that already invest in hydrogen?
Yes, a lot of quite a few airports are looking at it. There are several platforms that are active at the European level. Also, to comment on what Eddy Liégeois said earlier, airports do benefit from CEF, in particular on the AFIF, and there were 7 projects at airports that were specifically mentioned last week in the announcement, and those really target electrification of ground equipment, including PCAs or electrical APUs. I think airports are looking at hydrogen. We all heard about the announcement from Airbus that the introduction of the hydrogen-powered airplane will be postponed beyond 2035 as well. So in the short term, and the most meaningful way to achieve decarbonization is definitely SAF. Electrification will play a role, but on very short distances to start with. So we're really looking at very short flight segments, and there are a number of initiatives ongoing in Scandinavia, and in particular countries like Norway, where obviously you have mountain range, but you have very short flights of about 20 minutes or so that would otherwise take you 7 or 8 hours drive. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we will here put point to the discussion about the environment and sustainability of the airports. If you allow me to move to the next topic, so and we'll maybe reshuffle the agenda, so to concentrate on the dual use and civil and military cooperation. Adam, I know you are a strong supporter of the CPK idea, and you're also you were almost become a diplomat. So you're possibly following the global geopolitical discussion, and you know, everybody knows that yesterday there was this famous conversation between Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin. So do you think the CPK can also help Poland and the eastern flank to improve our security?
Ladies and gentlemen, just a very short correction. I'm just a strong advocate, not necessarily of CPK, but of everything that's good for my city and for my country. And I strongly believe that CPK is one of the projects where we as a city benefit. I'm not competent enough in this field, particularly, to judge if every element is proper or if every percentage of this project is conducted properly, because I'm a politician and a humble lawyer, not an expert. However, from the perspective of Central Poland, which is a place that was affected severely by economic transformation, and my city, Łódź, is the capital of Central Poland, I believe that CPK project and also further development of our own airport as a complementary project, I think it's good for us, period. And I also think it's good for Poland because infrastructure exceeds development. Infrastructure is a sine qua non condition if you want to develop socially, economically, in every other way. And this is something that we lacked for many years. I was born and raised in Germany, it's not a secret. And when I came back here from Frankfurt am Main in 1995, this looked really devastating. So the point where we started, comparing to the old EU countries, was a totally different galaxy. That's why, even though we've made a very rapid, very dynamic, and in my opinion, very spectacular jump forward, still we lack some infrastructure that will allow us to exploit our full potential. And I think that dual-use airports and dual-use infrastructure might be one of the tools. Poland spends almost 5% of GDP on military expense. I think it's by far the highest amount in EU, and I'm really proud of that, because I also, we Poles have different perspective than, for example, the Portuguese, because war is way closer to us, and the threat of Russian imperialism and expansionism is something that we are very familiar with, and we experienced that in a very brutal way in the past. So I believe that this element, plus our airport and exploiting the potential of the NATO airbase, which is also right next to our city, in the city of Łask, I think altogether it creates unique set of infrastructural tools that that can experience both civilian and military investments, out of which we naturally benefit. Every euro invested in infrastructure in our area, in Central Poland, and CPK is also in will be in Central Poland, is good for us, period. And I think that having in mind that our airport and the NATO military base, which is, 30 kilometers from this place, I think it would be better to do a dual-use investments than to separate it on one civilian investment, one military, because this is really massive infrastructure.
Yes, thanks a lot. So you mentioned that you need funds. We already mentioned it several times today, but maybe this is something Edi Liégeois could elaborate on, because we know there are some funds available within the TNT for dual use. Could you please tell us what are those possibilities?
I would say that, first of all, I strongly believe in the development of dual-use infrastructure, because as you said, we, on the one hand, will reinforce the defense of Europe, but on the other hand, it's also infrastructure which, in time of peace, will benefit to the civilian use, to commercial. So it's, I would say, all benefit. We have worked already a lot on that over the last 4 years. On the 18th of March, the Commission will publish a white paper on defense, which will include certainly a very strong point on the development of the defense industry, because as you said, we have to increase our expenditure in terms of defense to become more autonomous. But defense is not only the production of ammunition, but it's also military mobility, because we have to move the troops, we have to move the material. So logistics is definitely very important. And in this context, Poland, because of its geographical location, is very important, close to the eastern border. And Poland in particular is very important in terms of airports, because airport capacity is basically needed more when we approach to the front, to a possible place of conflict.
Yes, you mentioned Rzeszów. I would
I do not
say the name of the airport for you.
I do not dare to pronounce the name, but indeed that's the most important of the
But
US.
don't forget about us.
I don't forget about it.
I like Rzeszów, but you know.
Rzeszów. Yeah, exactly. We have already a specific, I would say, a specific envelope under the current CEF program, 1.7 billion euro, which in the end is a very small amount of money if we want to have really an impact on the improvement of military infrastructure. But still, we selected under this CEF program 95 projects. So I would say that all in all, it shows that the experience is very positive. So these projects have been evaluated by, let's say, our usual expert under the CEF program, but in cooperation with the EU military staff to analyze the, I would say, the added value from the military angle. But we want to do more, in particular on the next multi-annual financial perspective. We have designed 4 military corridors, so let's say corresponding to the NATO movement corridor, and we are currently identifying infrastructure on these 4 military corridors, so including airports, which might play a role for military mobility. So that's something which is really going on, and I think under this commission, which will, I would say, have a clear focus on defense, that something which will be reflected also in the next multi-annual financial perspective. So I think that we have definitely a card to play in terms of transport infrastructure.
Thanks a lot. So we already know that we have 1.7 billion euro for we had. What will we have now?
That's a big question, Mark. You should not ask me the question. I have no clue idea. First of all, most probably there will be very high pressure on the budget from the member states. So what we expect is that the future budget, which will be available from 2028, will most probably not be higher than the budget that we had under this term. So that's first point. So then the envelope will probably not be bigger, but there are new priorities which have emerged, linked to the new geopolitical context, energy and defense. So we would have, let's say, big time, strong time, I would say, to defend the transport priorities. So it's very difficult, and it would be just speculation to guess what could be the envelope. To give you a little bit the magnitude on the investment, if we look at the project which have, let's say, a military component. So we have made consultation with the member states, all the member states, and looking at potential project on the 4 military corridors that we have identified. So we have identified 500 projects. So they are big, they are small projects, but we arrive with this 500 project to an overall amount of investment need of around 75 billion euros. Having in mind that what military need is, let's say, short-term project. These are not persons who look for project which will deliver in 10 or 15 years, but project which would deliver, let's say, in the next decade. So that gives you a little bit the magnitude of, I would say, project which are ready to go in Europe, in the European Union, having a military angle, but always dual use.
Thank you. So I wanted to ask Mr. Czarnicki about whether he would apply for the EU military mobility funds, but since he plans to open the airport in 2032, then I need to rephrase my question and ask whether you would be able to really execute the project without those funds, and how do you think it will help our security needs in terms of NATO mobility and so on?
First of all, I think it is very important just to underline one thing. I'm very much in favor of dual use, though please bear in mind that this is also an enterprise. An airport is a business. we need to be profitable. Sorry to say, but the military is not paying. So if we are if we are following this model, then it's actually a way of subsidizing military bases at civil airports. I mean, that's a model that we need to solve and somehow rearrange. I mean, that's definitely not the way it should be. I mean, if we are thinking of dual use and we are thinking of security, and that's the responsibility of the state, of the government, and we want to have also the military bases spread out, and it's obvious that we cannot concentrate all military equipment or just have one military airport. But if we are spreading out this infrastructure, we need to think of how is this cooperation financial-wise moderated. I mean, it's how it should work. In Polish case, this can be easily observed in Rzeszów, already mentioned. This huge military base, which it became now, also uses civil infrastructure, and it devaluates much quicker than it otherwise would be. It needs now major investments, refurbishment, and the question is who is going to pay for that. If we think of, let's say, Radom, another example of a dual-use airport, which is heavily used for military training, but again, the infrastructure has been civil investment, an investment of PPL, and president of PPL is having now.
He's losing his money.
Yeah, and he's basically thinking of how to finance an airport that is mostly used by military. So what I'm saying is dual use, and it's also going to be the case of CPK. CPK has reserved quite an area for a military base, but I'm also interested in setting up fair rules of this dual use model. So that needs to be solved in a general way, I guess.
Thank you. Eddie, you wanted to comment shortly because we need to speak about security.
I would like to say that I fully agree with what you said. It's not because an infrastructure is declared as dual use that it can receive any type of fund. We have to be very careful, in particular for the airport, because in the project that we have received under the current CEF program, we had many projects precisely on airport to prolong a runway or different infrastructure, which would benefit for sure also the civilian use, but we have to be very careful that we do not create distortion of competition. So I think that dual use does not mean that for example, the EU in particular would fund any type of infrastructure in the airport, because indeed that could be detrimental for the competition. So we should really choose the project and project which have a clear, let's say, specific military value, and there we could intervene. But the experience, in particular in the airport, precisely shows that certain airports, I would say, I identified this possibility and as a nice way to being funded by EU fund, and we should definitely avoid this approach.
Yeah, thank you. We have less than 9 minutes left, so I just wanted to check up with Mr. Jacob, because I received information from your MISI that you want to concentrate on the environment stuff, but I wouldn't like you to feel avoided in these panels. I just wanted to check if you want to speak about security or dual use, or you would prefer to.
No, I can just share the information that we have had dual-use airports for many years, with mostly with the military owning the runways and their own installations, and then there's a civilian terminal also. I think this has worked well, but as I said after we built a bridge between the main parts of Denmark, then there wasn't a lot of the business of domestic air travel traffic was sort of gone. Yeah, so they were busier before that.
Thank you. Let's move to the last topic, so the security and protection, and I will come back to Mr. Morgan. How can airports in the TNT network, in your opinion, adapt to increasing security challenges and the evolving threats?
Thank you. I think I would not differentiate between airports within the TNT network and others, but the TNT network does comprise quite a lot of airports, so I think we can talk about all airports. Just on funding, there was a call from the whole transport sector last week to encourage and try and make sure that we keep CEF funding for the transport sector in the future. Eddie said that obviously the priorities at EU level may well be changing in the face of geopolitics, and this is a link to security, given the need to increase spending on defense and on energy. On security, obviously, with changing geopolitics and certainly the recent attacks on the cargo supply chain really reminded us that aviation is not only a lifeline for EU citizens and businesses, it's also a strategic target. So we need to protect passengers' infrastructure, the resilience of our operations. This is absolutely paramount. It's a high priority for us. For that, we have been advocating for a very strong EU support to develop, but also to fund advanced testing and certification of security equipment. You have all seen the reintroduction of restrictions on the carriage of liquids in September, and of course that has really undermined the trust and the confidence of the industry in new technology. So that needs to be corrected. The message here to regulators is that we need stability in aviation security regulations. We cannot go ahead, purchase expensive equipment, and then face a change of regulation whereby the acquis and the benefits of the advanced technology are taken away. We need robust public-private partnerships as well. We need international cooperation, and there's where obviously there is a big question mark. With the new US administration, there's a lot of cooperation in the area of security. It is a very global issue. It's not only the EU, it's the EU plus the UK plus the US. This is where all these restrictions on liquids originated. They initially originated in the UK, following a remark from the US that they did not agree with the way the UK did things, and that's how we came about a new restriction on carriage of liquids last September. We need international cooperation to counter physical but also cyber security, and we need to enhance cyber maturity in the air transport ecosystem. This is absolutely critical. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are standards outside the aviation industry, so it's not like we need to reinvent something specifically for aviation, but we need to follow these standards. We also need to reduce the regulatory burden on airports. We only have limited financial and human resources, and we need to make sure that we can allocate these resources where they're most needed. So on mitigating threats, and this is where I would say that regulations should be our allies. They should not be obstacles. We need to rely more on risk-based and intelligence-led security measures. So instead of just compliance with old-fashioned regulation, we need to be able to target the resource, the limited target resource we have. And in closing, I'd say we need some good intelligence sharing, harmonized responses across member states and industry stakeholders to ensure we can have swift actions on security. I will limit it to that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking at the time. Yeah. So, Eddie, my last question to you is about the regulation number 300/2008 and about acts of unlawful interference. Could you please tell us what are the new developments in this area?
First of all, Morgan made a very nice list of what has to be done on security. I'm not in charge of security. What I can just say is that for sure we have to look at the investment, but also very important is to say that security and safety are really objective that we cannot compromise. The regulation is quite old, but has been regularly updated to, let's say, to be adapted to the new emerging threats and threats which are different and evolve continuously. What we have done is a kind of stock taking exercise in 2023, so looking a little bit at a different angle of security. And what I can only say is that my colleagues now are, let's say, putting a little bit the different pieces together to see a little bit what needs to be adapted, to be changed, and perhaps on some aspect to be adapted to, let's say, to avoid unnecessary cost when possible. And then some adaptation, some proposal might come later. I would perhaps just highlight two elements which are particularly important. Have been emerging issues that, on one hand, all what is related to cyber threat, and also the question of drones, which can be used in different ways. But we have seen that in the past, I would say drones have, I would say, completely blocked airports, so can be really disruptions of airport capacity. So perhaps just to highlight these two elements, which will definitely need to be to have a close look in future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I don't see any questions under my LinkedIn post, but just to make sure, there is one question. So very shortly, maybe. Please present yourself.
Thank you. My name is Claudiu Stoicu, representing the Ministry of Transport from Romania. I was just curious to have your thoughts on the urban air mobility and if you see any future in that. We've been seeing recently quite a lot of initiatives falling apart, and I was just curious if there is a future in this regard, or if at the level of the Commission, are there any discussions on the table to enhance this mobility option as well? Thank you.
Mulțumesc.
Yes, that's something on which we have been working over the last years, and we continue to work in particular also in the field of research. So that's definitely a field on which we continue to work. I would say if there is a future and I would say a place for EU action, that would be in particular on all question of standardization. And that's something very important if we want to see, let's say, some new technologies emerging, some innovation, then we will have to work, I would say, in the coming years, building the bridge between what we have done with DG Research on urban, I would say, mobility, I would say for air mobility, and potentially having these innovative solutions being put on the market. So yes, indeed, I think we can definitely have a role in this context.
Thanks a lot. Look, the time has run up, so let me just wrap up in one sentence that we would like to have sustainable, secure airports that possibly are also dual use, but if they are to be really shared with the military, at least in Poland, we want them to pay the bill. And yes, we are looking for money from the member states and for these investments, not only in sustainability but also military mobility. And with that, I would like to thank our guests and please give a warm applause to Mr. Jacob Heinsen, the Secretary of State at the Ministry of Transport of Denmark. Mr. Adam Pustelnik, Deputy Mayor of Łódź. Mr. Filip Czernicki, CEO and President of the Management Board of CPK. Mr. Morgan Fowlkes, Deputy Director General of Airports Council International. And Guy Lejoie, Head of Aviation Policy Unit at the European Commission. Thank you very much. And the next panel is taking place in the main hall. Thanks a lot.